Are you ready for the most frustrating week of the year? Because this week is nothing but major highlights that are very, very frustrating. And I don't want to call them bad. I want to call them frustrating. But if you're not ready, guess what? That's what this video is for. By the end of this video, you're going to be ready for this week and you're going to know exactly what to do. Welcome back to the Astrology Report. My name is Cam White. If you don't know me already, I'm a professional astrologer. I've been doing this for over 8 years. I have almost 1,000 videos and I've seen literally thousands of clients. I love talking about astrology and helping people navigate their lives with astrology. And this week, we're talking about August 12th through the 18th. And if you've been watching me for any sort of amount of time, I have talked about this week and next week, really the 12th through the 19th is the most frustrating week of the year. So you need to be prepared and you need to have a very clear mind about how you're going to handle this because you will be tested and you will be challenged. So let's go ahead and get started talking about it. So the good news is we start the week off with not too many highlights. However, as we go throughout the week is when we get more and more highlights. But we start Monday off with the moon in Scorpio making a trine to Saturn, and then it's going to square the sun. And I don't often talk about the moon making an aspect to the sun besides a full moon or a new moon, but I find this one a little bit more important. After the moon makes a square to the sun, the moon is then going to go opposite Uranus. So the big thing here is there's strength in your emotions. There's a stability in emotions, and there is the strength via pain. The moon is in Scorpio, right? We're feeling a little bit bitter. We're feeling a little bit resentful, but it's trining Saturn in Pisces where there's an opportunity to get a little bit more clear and to go a little bit more in depth in ourselves and say, hey, why am I feeling this way? Is there a way that I could transform this emotion, that I could transmute this emotion into something more powerful, something more positive? Saturn in Pisces is about being a lot more strong and a lot more disciplined with our internal spiritual, like, again, I keep making this analogy of Sagittarius is the outward expansion of like our beliefs and Pisces is more the inward, more yin. Saturn is saying, hey, you need to be more mature here. You need to have a better grip on this. And the moon in Scorpio making a trine to Saturn is like these kind of deeper emotions. This is allowing you an opportunity to get a little bit deeper into, hey, how can you be a little bit more mature about your internal working mechanisms, essentially? But the moon is then going to make a square to the sun in Leo. There's a little bit of an ego check here. With the sun in Scorpio, with the sun in Leo and the moon in Scorpio, it's going to be easy to be like ramped up with your ego and wanting to have revenge or have this resentment. And it's really important to like check that about yourself. Like, are you taking action based out of revenge? Are you taking action based out of like, again, just like this metastasized anger? You really need to be careful about that because the moon will then make an opposition to Uranus where, hey, you might do something, you might touch the hot stove in a revengeful manner. And well, guess what? You're going to get burnt immediately. So like your actions have consequences and it's very instant karma on Monday if you kind of lean into negative behaviors. But the moon going opposite Uranus, if you're not doing the negative behaviors, is there's going to be something unexpected. Your goal is to not lose it, and your goal is to not let the unexpected destabilize you. Like the moon is in Scorpio, you're trying to be cool, you're trying to be rational, and there's still going to be something that's going to test you. Try not to let that, again, you might be having a shitty day, and then there's just someone on the road, and you want to, have some road rage and yell out at them. Be careful about that. I watch a lot of videos of encounters where people have to use self-defense, and you'd be surprised how many people die over road rage. And it's really the most retarded way to die. So if you want to be known for being retarded, go ahead and have road rage, but really it's not the place for it. So on Monday, be careful about road rage, but also take that and apply it to the rest of your life. You don't need to blow up. You don't need to have that sort of like, this is just the last straw and I'm going to go crazy with it. Use Monday as a time to gain a lot more control over your emotions and be the bigger person. Then we get to Tuesday, and Tuesday's quite a vibe shift. The moon will make a trine to Neptune, but then it's going to go into Sagittarius and square Mercury. And it's kind of weird because the moon, while it's in Scorpio, trining Neptune is like really getting lost in the sauce and making up stories. Like, again, like, you didn't lean into the road rage, but now you're like, man, if that guy would have pulled over, I would have beat the shit out of him. Or, if everything just went my way, it would have looked like this. Try not to get too lost in the stories or make up a bunch of scenarios. That can be helpful at times to just kind of like alleviate yourself of it, but it can also be more detrimental because now you're stewing in it. Now you're stewing in it. And the moon in Scorpio is really good for stewing, and we don't want to harbor those negative emotions, right? We want to transmute them, process them, and get over it. And that's what's nice about Tuesday is the moon will trine Neptune. So there is a minute where we kind of stew, but then the moon goes into Sagittarius. There's like this freedom. There's this like, optimism that happens. However, the moon in Sagittarius squares Mercury in Virgo while it's retrograde. And this is just kind of like blurting things out in optimism that maybe you don't really mean, or that you don't really, like, you didn't have a clear line of communication. The moon in Sagittarius wants that fun, that optimism, and that freedom. But as it squares Mercury retrograde in Virgo, it's kind of like I've made the analogy before of Sagittarius when it comes to like camping or going on a road trip is like, let's just get in the car and go. And Virgo is like the kind of person that's like, well, I need my sunscreen and I need my walking stick and I need all these little things. And Sagittarius is like, yeah, shut up. We're going to go. The moon in Sag squaring Mercury retrograde in Virgo is kind of like, okay, you get so excited to go to the beach that you forget your swim trunks. You might actually need the swim trunks to go to the beach, if that makes sense. So what I look at with Tuesday is don't get so caught up in the feeling of wanting to move forward that you that you forget something really specific that you might need. And that might cause a little bit of a delay. That's okay. But that moon and Sag squaring Mercury is going to be a little bit frustrating in terms of like logistics and time. You just want to go, but you might, again, need to actually bring some stuff with you this time. And then we get to Wednesday. Wednesday is the beginning of the most frustrating time period. It's really, again, like August 12th through the 19th. You can kind of go a little bit past that, like maybe even the 21st. But here's what happens. The moon, while it's in Sagittarius, is going to square Venus in Virgo. Then we have our first highlight of the week, and that is Mars conjoining Jupiter. We are then going to have the moon, while it's in Sag, go opposite Mars and Jupiter in Gemini. And then it's going to immediately make a square to Saturn. And then the next highlight that we have is Mercury, now that it's retrograde, is going back into Leo. Wednesday is going to test you. You need to be on top of your game and you need to lock it in. The first thing is moon and Sag squaring Venus in Virgo. It is hard to have fun with Debbie Downers. It is hard to have fun with people that nitpick things and that want to criticize every little thing is not enjoyable. Number one, if you're one of those people, you're not going to like Wednesday because you're going to have a lot to nitpick. And I think people are going to tell you to fuck off on Wednesday. So try not to be a Debbie Downer and don't focus on the things that aren't exactly perfect because guess what? Life isn't perfect. And this is the attitude on Wednesday is shut the fuck up. Like if you're going to be nitpicky and all these little tiny things, you are not here for that. Like for example, like if you're on a flight and there's the baby crying, it's hot and you're staying on the tarmac and then you get those people like, when are we going to go? It's like, shut the fuck up. We're all here. You yelling at the pilot or whoever is not helping anybody or anything right now. The moon and Sag squaring Venus and Virgo is like, you're trying to have fun. You're trying to be optimistic, but there's going to be someone there that's like, well, blah, 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 blah. It's essentially Karen energy. So expect some Karens, some NPC Karens to give you a challenge on Wednesday. But then we have Mars conjoining Jupiter. There is something blowing up on Wednesday. Mars is fights and conflicts. Mars is energy and drive and action. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So this is like one little tiny argument turns into this whole blow up. This is you trying to put, again, it reminds me of like if you ever watched Fast and Furious, they have NOS, they have nitrous oxide that they put in their cars to like then go even faster. That's Mars conjoining Jupiter. There's this need for speed. There's this huge blow up of energy that's going on. And that can be good and bad. The reason why it's good is, hey, if you want to go fast, you're going to go fast. The reason why it's bad, though, is that we have all of this stuff squaring Saturn. Not to mention, I'm going to kind of talk about all of these transits all as like a big loop. The moon, while it's in Sagittarius, is going to go opposite Mars and Jupiter. So it's kind of like, for example, Jupiter, or I should say Gemini is about two different things, going left and going right, and Sagittarius is much more linear. Think of the bow and arrow. You have one target, but Gemini is two people. Can you kill two birds with one stone? Maybe, if you're excellent, if you have like a boomerang. But the moon and Sag going opposite that Mars Jupiter is like, there's really a blow up. And the blow up is, again, the Sag Gemini axis. It's the information and the ideas against the philosophy. When you think about this in like a business perspective, like there are businesses that have a philosophy that they ingrain themselves with, and then they have the, way that in which they communicate that philosophy. When those two things aren't in alignment, then nothing works. Apple is a really good example of a company that knows how to communicate their philosophy with branding, with the way that they communicate their PR, everything like that. Like they're really, really on point. I can't think of an exact brand that doesn't do that well because again, that's how they make, money. But the Mars Jupiter conjunction is an explosion or too much communication or too much ideas and getting frustrated in conflict over again. Well, you said it this way. And, and the moon and Sagittarius is like, well, I didn't really mean to say it that way. Or at least that's not what I mean. I just accidentally said it that way. You got to understand, like, it's going to be so easy to lean into taking things, out of proportion and leaning into the blow up energy. It's going to be so easy, but you're going to exhaust yourself. When you spend time and energy, it reminds me of online conflicts. I believe I was looking at the Discord group over for my Patreon, and someone was talking about like how they stopped engaging with people online. My biggest thing, I forgot exactly what he said, but my biggest thing is it is such a waste of time to argue with people online. It is the biggest waste of time. And to me, I get so frustrated with myself. And again, like I've told you guys before, I'll read negative comments and I get all worked up about it. And I hate it. I hate it so much because I'm letting people take my precious energy and my time away from me. And I want you to put that into perspective for your own life. For example, when someone doesn't agree with you on something or this or that, why are you letting them take your energy? And again, I'm not perfect with this. That's the reason I'm saying it is I have that work to do and I'm constantly doing that work. And it's so easy to lean in. It's so easy to see a dumb comment on social media and then reply and be like, well, you're dumb. You're more dumb than this and blah, blah, blah. And all it's doing is stealing. It's R-wording your energy and you're allowing it to happen. And it's going to be so easy to do that on Wednesday. And the thing is, there's no reward. There's no winning. You don't change the mind on someone online about something you disagree with. You don't. And then you're angry, you're upset, and you just wasted another part of your life on nothing. That Mars-Jupiter conjunction is going to have some sort of an argument or blow up. The moon and Sag opposite is, again, it's the perfect social media argument of here's all the words that we're saying, even though that person probably doesn't mean those words, but we're getting caught up in the words and not the actual message itself. That is the argument. That's the negative side of this. Here's the positive side of this, though. What do you need to actually do? Where do you actually need to put the pedal to the metal? There's a difference between playing to lose, playing to play. A lot of you guys play your life to not lose. Some of you just play to play, and then there's other people that play to win. That might be a bigger concept that I need to go into a delineation video about, because this is a very, I root a lot of my life in this, and it's really good feedback. When you play to lose, you're literally just self-sabotaging. You are proving your subconscious right, and you're getting all of that. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm shitty, and I wish I wasn't shitty. It's like, well, you're shitty because you're getting something out of it, and you actually secretly indulge in it, but a lot of you aren't ready for that conversation. And then there's people that play to not lose, where they have this huge expectation that they're going to lose and that nothing's going to work, so they try to do everything they can to not do that. And it's like, okay, you're literally focusing on the thing that you shouldn't be focusing on, and you're wondering why you're hitting that target. When it comes to, let's say archery or shooting, or even, for example, when you ride motocross, your bike, your bullet, your arrow goes wherever you're looking. It doesn't go anywhere else. Playing to play is you're just playing the game. You're not there for any specific reason. You're not actually trying to play a goal. It's like you're playing baseball at high school and you could easily be, in the MLB, but you don't really give a shit. And then there's playing to win. And playing to win is, I've been thinking a lot about what Tom Brady talks about when he talks about playing football. And he said he played every single game like it was the Super Bowl. So when he did get to the Super Bowl, it was just another game to him. That's playing to win. That fucker's got 7 rings. And I don't give a shit if you don't like football. You're talking to one of the one of the best athletes of our time. I was a big Tom Brady fan when I was growing up. I was a Patriots fan. Okay, whatever, roast me. But here's the deal. The Mars-Jupiter conjunction with that moon and Sag opposite is what is it going to take to align yourself? That moon and Sag is we have the optimism, we have the fun, and the Mars-Jupiter conjunction is you're going over here, you're going over there. We're all distracted with everything. And there's a big part of that that's hey, you might have to put out this fire, this fire, this fire, and this fire. And it might be a day where you don't get to progress in the way that you want to. But the thing is, you've got to lock in and understand what the philosophy is. You can't get lost in the weeds. You can't get lost in the little tiny details that are right in front of you. You have to play to win. You have to look at that bigger picture. So after the moon goes opposite Mars and Jupiter, it immediately makes a square to Saturn. Big hard no, big stop, big block. Are you going to let that stop you? With the moon and Sag scoring Saturn and Pisces, it just is going to feel like you're not going anywhere. It's going to feel like you're not progressing. It's going to feel that way, even though you're not. But in that moment, you're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel like you can't go any further. And you have to let that moment pass, and you have to do the work anyway. When we get to the next highlight on Wednesday, we're going to have Mercury retrograde going back into Leo. There's a little bit of, again, ego checking here, because there's a lot of pounding your chest. There's a pounding your chest in a good way and a pounding your chest in a bad way. The bad way is Mercury retrograde in Leo with all of the conflicts going on is just like, screaming, yelling, all of this kind of stuff. And it doesn't help anybody. I want to bring up an example. However, it's controversial and I don't think it will be the way that I would talk about it. I don't think it'd be interpreted by my audience the correct way. So maybe one day I'll talk about that. It's really good for this. The way, like, there's no argument worth raising your voice for. If you can't actually state what you're saying, and again, someone else might be yelling and screaming at you, you don't got to feed into it. It's easy though. It's so easy to do that, but you don't win. There's no argument where whoever's the loudest wins. Everyone just gets hurt. Everyone loses. With Mercury retrograde in Leo, you need to be careful about what you're saying, how you're saying it, and letting that rage take you over. Mercury is combust right now. When Mercury is retrograde in Leo, it's like we're not sure what we're actually saying. However, here's a positive way to beat your chest. Mercury retrograding in Leo is coming back to that idea that you are that guy. You are that fucker. You can actually solve this situation. But it's not going to be like here's all these problems, I can do it. It's you got to actually get into your soul and get fucking real. Because either you're going to play to win or you're going to lose. There's no other way around it. I think a lot about, I forgot what book this was in, whether it was like Think and Grow Rich or whatever, but it was talking about, somewhere like, I think it was like some Spaniards. They were going to go to war with some island and the captain decided to light all their boats on fire. So they had no choice but to win. That's how I look at Wednesday. You might have to metaphorically put yourself in that mindset of, you don't have a choice but to get through this. You don't have a choice but to win. This is going to be a test. This is going to be a challenge. And I'm so sick of people using astrology as a victim excuse. This could be a challenge that you overcome that proves everything about yourself that you told yourself before wrong. And it's up to you to disprove that. And it's about your will. Again, we have the sun in Leo here. Your will is really strong. Don't let yourself falter to weakness. You're so much better than that. So on Wednesday, you're going to be challenged. And this isn't a challenge as in like, today's a little bit more rough. This is a make or break point. And I have 100% confidence that every single one of you watching this can get through this because we're locked in. We understand. That's the whole point. We understand the weather. We understand the context of it's so hard for me to say the context of our lives without thinking of Kamala Harris. Did you fall off a coconut tree? I can't not think about it anymore. But lock it in this week, guys. Let's get real. This is a challenging time and you can get through this. And this can set yourself up for so many better times. I know you can get through Wednesday. So then we get to Thursday. And the moon, while it's still in Sagittarius, is going to make a trine to Mercury. And then it's going to square Neptune. Then the moon will move into Capricorn. And then we have our next highlight, which is Mars squaring Saturn. The frustration continues. Wednesday just starts it. Wednesday's just the start of it. And it continues for a whole other 7 to 9 days. So on Thursday, when the moon's in Sag trining Mercury in Leo, I feel like this is like a shrugging it off. Like there is something available to you on Thursday that's like, you know what? I did that. The moon in Sag trining Mercury in Leo, I fucking handled that shit. There's nothing better than and again, this is why I said what I said on Wednesday. When you have a conflict or a challenge that just feels insurmountable and you surmount it or you take it on and you kill it, there's nothing that makes you feel better than be like, I fucking had that problem and I solved it and I crushed it. Stop me, motherfuckers. I know I'm cussing a lot in this one, but on some real shit. I'm just trying to give you guys some real fucking shit right now. The moon will square Neptune though. The hard part about that is the moon in Sag trining Mercury retrograde in Leo is very I'm the shit, feeling very pompous, but then the moon squaring Neptune is very okay, what do I do now? It's there's some confusion in the air. And there's also a little bit of distortion of what just happened. It reminds me of kind of trauma shock or when someone is in shock, it's kind of I don't remember what just happened right now. I just blacked out and everything just kind of went that way. So try not to lean into that too much. The moon then goes into Capricorn. All what I like about this is I like about the moon. I like the moon going into Capricorn at this time because it's just kind of laying low, just kind of taking things seriously. The moon in Sag, it'll be really easy to get our emotions worked up. Moon in Capricorn is a little bit more, what's the word? Stoic. And when the moon goes into Capricorn, just lay low, chill out. But then we have Mars squaring Saturn. We continue the frustration. Mars in Gemini, it's just this rage of, I want to do this. I want to do that. This is right. This is wrong. I want to go here, but I also want to go there. And Saturn's in the superior position. This isn't option A or option B better. It's like why aren't you listening? You know what I mean? Mars squaring Saturn is if Mars is energy and drive and action, fights and conflicts. Saturn is authorities, superiority, maturity, discipline, restrictions. It's wanting to turn the nos on your car and go fast. But you got that emergency brake on. You have something inside you telling you don't go that fast. You have something inside you saying, why are you actually going that fast? Do you need to put all of your energy into this right now? And if you're going to put all your energy into this, are you even clear about what you're putting your energy into? It's the difference, in magic. The big thing with magic for me, this is just a little side thing, but this is important, is all magic is doing, so let's say you want to cast a spell, is just figuring things out and doing things for your subconscious to connect something with. You don't really need to actually do physical stuff. Sometimes it could be as simple as when I walk through this door, when you put the energy and the intention behind it, when I walk through this door, this change is going to happen and I'm never going to go back. It could be as simple as that. That takes a lot of energy and concentration though. But that's how I look at this Mars and Gemini squaring Saturn and Pisces is, why am I doing this? Why am I going this way? Not necessarily like why as in a logical way, but why inside, internally. That Mars square Saturn is going to feel like everything is stopping you, that there is no way forward, and it's going to feel frustrating. But the goal here is to ask yourself why and remind yourself why. Why are you doing everything that you're doing? Is it just for whatever sake? Is it just to win the rat race? Or is there something deeper for you to achieve here? The Mars square Saturn is going to be frustrating. With all this happening in the mutable signs, it's all about adapting. Can you adapt and overcome? We are human beings. We can adapt to so many situations. Do not tell yourself that you can't adapt because it's literally in your nature. It's, in fact, genetically and evolutionarily, it's one of the best things you can do is adapt. However, we want things to be consistent. We want things to be the same. But the only thing in the universe that is consistent is change. And that Mars square Saturn is the way that you're going forward is going to require some change. And you might have to have a hard stop. For example, this is a shitty example, but some of you, I shouldn't say some of you as if like this is going to happen, but an example of this is, let's say you're an alcoholic and you drive. You might wrap your car around a telephone pole or harm someone. And that might be hey, you need to fucking stop. You need to stop doing that. And you're going to learn the fucking hard way. You don't have to. You don't have to drink. You don't have to get behind the wheel of the car and go do something retarded. But that Mars squaring Saturn is like, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to learn it the hard way. Then we get to Friday. And the moon, while it's in Capricorn, is going to trine Venus. It's going to make a sextile to Saturn. And then we get our next highlight. This isn't necessarily a highlight, but just bear with me here. Jupiter squaring Saturn. That transit begins on Friday. The reason why I'm saying that transit begins is now they get within a degree of each other, but that isn't really actually perfect until I believe next Monday. But we have a lot to talk about here. The moon, while it's in Capricorn, is going to make a trine to Venus. This is just figuring out the next steps. This is quiet time. The moon is going to sextile Saturn. I really like this for like, hey, on all of the bigger stuff, there's all of this stuff going on, but let's get silent with ourselves and just do what's in front of us. We can't solve every single life problem that faces us all right here, right now. You can only do what's in front of you. And there's so much peace in that. For example, I've talked a lot about this, and I'm going to keep using this analogy when Mars goes into Cancer. But my dad was a firefighter, and he was a wildland firefighter in California. He was a battalion chief. His whole job was deploying different battalions in terms of like how they're going to combat, a 200,000 acre fire or some shit like that. What he talked a lot about was like, you don't put out a wildfire. Like you control a circumstance to where like, hey, this is where we think we're going to be able to put it out. And it's going to burn a lot more. And we just focus on protecting homes. Like it sucks when you have this fire that's devastating the ecosystem and the environment and you want to put it out, but it's just not possible. So what you do is you focus on the homes and getting people like safe and making sure their houses don't get destroyed. And then you think about, okay, well, the fire is going to keep going this way. It's going to keep expanding. Where's the most realistic place that we can actually start encapsulating this? But that means it's going to keep burning for a while. That's how I look at this is like, there might be all this wildfire going on right now, but we need to come in and say, what is the priority of what are things to do right here, right now? Some things you're just going to have to let burn and you're going to be okay. As Jupiter squares Saturn, though, this is a much more meta transit. We had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the very end of 2020. New timeline began. This timeline, or I should say this timeline, since we started that timeline, we are now in the pivot. We are in the first quarter phase. You have to ask yourself, Jupiter is about your beliefs and your faith, and it's a detriment in Gemini. Saturn is about control and authority and maturity, and it's about that internal stuff. And that Jupiter Saturn is this internal struggle of like, what do I actually believe? What do I actually know? What do I actually like want to get in control of? And I look at this Jupiter-Saturn square as, we're not going to get into the weeds of like what exactly this means, but just understand there's a really big pivot going on. The reason I bring up this transit is not only is it a big deal, but this is more of like in the background. This isn't like as simple as like, oh, there's problems and you're going to, overcome them, whatever. This is like this moment matters a lot more than you think. This moment has a lot more long-term impact than you think. When we start going into 2028, 2029, and 2030, when we start getting the Jupiter-Saturn opposition, which is going to be both in Scorpio and Taurus and Sagittarius and Gemini. This moment is a pivot, and this moment is much deeper than you anticipate. Take this seriously. Then we get to Saturday. We don't have highlights on Saturday. Congratulations, but we got a lot on Sunday, so stay tuned. On Saturday, the moon will make a trine to Uranus and sextile Neptune. Great unexpected solution. The moon's in Capricorn. As we're locking in, getting serious, trines Uranus, sweet. We got something figured out. It's going to sextile Neptune. There's a little bit of creativity that we tap into. Then the moon's going to go into Aquarius and conjoin Pluto. This is kind of just a change in subject. And the moon going into Aquarius is now beginning the full moon in Aquarius that we get next week. But the moon conjoining Pluto is that opportunity of like, are you going to be paralyzed in fear? You're on stage in front of everybody. Are you going to be paralyzed and weakened by fear? Or are you going to step into a powerful state? Are you going to step into a transmutive state? And then we get to Sunday. Fuck Sunday. Just this fucking time, guys, is it just is what it is. It just is what it is. And we're gonna get through it. And maybe you don't take life as deep as maybe I do. I'm a life path 9, so I guess just how I am. But it just is what it is. On Sunday, our first highlight is Mercury is gonna be retrograde square Uranus. So we have the second Mercury-Uranus square. Like I said before, I talked about this in the Mercury retrograde video. Make sure you watch it. Then immediately after, we get the Mercury Cazimi. Good news. Then the moon, while it's in Aquarius, trines Jupiter and Mars. And then we have Venus squaring Jupiter at the very, very late Sunday evening. As Mercury retrograde squares Uranus, there's kind of this throwing it all in the trash, letting go of expectations or how your plans are supposed to be, and just you're going to have to wing it. What's nice about this, though, is like Mercury being retrograde in this fixed sign is like we have like our ego wants this one solution out of it. It wants this one way. And I think the goal is just throw it away. Just let go of the expectations. Let go of the preconceived notions that you had about this situation. Just throw it in the trash. Let's start over real fast. Then we get the Mercury Cazimi. There's a clarity and there's a solution. There's a clarity of what the problem was. There's a solution of what the problem, and there's a solution to what the problem is. That Mercury Cazimi in Leo is really mindset shift. Like it's Leo. It's the sun in Leo. It's who are you in this situation? In any moment, you can change your attitude about anything. Like people like to say like, oh, I'm in a bad, blah, blah, blah. Like attitude shift. I learned that real fast because you guys see my video. I'm kind of aggressive. I'm kind of a dick at times. When I was a kid, I got punished a lot and I had to learn how to change my attitude real fucking fast. Otherwise, I got beat. Not really beat. There's a few times, but otherwise, I got my fucking ass handed to me. That Mercury Cazimi in Leo is okay. Step into that leadership position. Have that attitude shift. Mercury retrograde scoring Uranus again. More destabilization, more things just going awry that you didn't want. Just throw it in the trash. Just don't even worry about it. Worry about how you are handling this. Don't worry about the problem itself. Worry about your attitude around the problem, your confidence around finding a solution to the problem. That's what you need to focus on. The moon is in Aquarius, building up to that full moon in Aquarius, and it's going to be trining Jupiter and Mars. There are solutions, and what I love about this is it's like go big or go home. Who do you have around you? That moon in Aquarius is like, it's trining Mars and Jupiter. There's all these ideas. You can be creative with your solutions. And that moon in Aquarius trining Mars and Jupiter is like, you know what? It might just be like the big, fuck it, I got to change all of this stuff. Big solution, go big or go home. With Venus squaring Jupiter, though, there's a level of this that's like beggars can't be choosers. Like, you really can't. You're going to have to dance with the one that you brought. You're going to have to, like, you might have limited resources. We'll figure it out. The other part with Venus squaring Jupiter is that there might just be too many details. And you might just be overwhelmed with it. And again, you might just have to say, you know what? There's a time to lean into the details. There's a time to lean into the information. And there's other times to say, you know what? The bigger picture is the thing to actually deal with here. We will be talking more about Venus squaring Jupiter next week because it does. There's a lot more about next Monday that's really, really important. And the Venus squaring Jupiter doesn't really happen until very late Sunday. But let me know in the comments how you're going to go about this. because I know you can. What are you expecting to happen? And I shouldn't even ask, what are you expecting to happen? I'm going to ask you right in the comments, let me know that no matter what is going to happen to you in whatever context, you have the ability to overcome this and to let this time be a pivot in your life. Next week, we continue the frustration. I'm not saying any of this is easy. I'm not saying any of this is a cakewalk. What I'm saying though is if you lock it in and you take this seriously, this can be incredibly impactful for your life. Next week, Venus squares Jupiter. First thing, Venus then goes opposite Saturn. It continues. It just continues. We don't get out of this. Not for another minute. We have the Jupiter-Saturn square again. This is a bigger part. This is not just, oh, it's a frustrating time. This is hey, this is frustrating, but this is a big deal. The way that you handle this is the way that you handle everything else in your life. Do you want to make that? Do you want to change that? We have the full moon in Aquarius. Full moon, just add that to the list. The sun will ingress into Virgo. Then we have Venus scoring Mars. Venus and Virgo scoring Mars and Gemini. It's just so, it's like trying on a new outfit and it doesn't work and everyone's telling you it. And it's like every time the person's like, why are you wearing that? Why are you wearing that? It just gets annoying. And then we have Mercury sextile Mars, which is kind of nice. This week, next week, all frustrating. We don't get out of it for a while. Lock it in, handle this. You can do this. This is the time to step up. This is the time. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Like this video. It helps me out a lot. And I will be seeing you guys next week.